Hello everyone. As said before, my name is Madara. And today, together with me, I have amazing guests and very international group of experts coming from the, I wouldn't say metaverse, but related technologies. And as we may say in Latvian, ladies first. And I would like to start with Sylvia, a very technical lady with Master of Science in Signal Processing, right? With over 15 years experience in telecom industry and now responsible for the corporate strategy at u-blox. Sylvia, maybe you can tell a bit more what is your strategy in your company right now and how it goes along with the metaverse. So let's already deep dive into the business behind this all.
So really glad to be here again this year. So my involvement in Metaverse was a summer year interview last year as a part of Meta City project. We carried out some actually stakeholders here in the room. We conducted a study on Meta City. And we found that after interviewing the stakeholders and analyzing the industry environment outside of Riga, in Latvia, we found Riga has a potential to be the European successful meta city.
Great.
Amazingly, because of the connectivity infrastructure, that's really great in terms of capacity coverage, but also the AR/VR innovation community that Madara, you're leading, for example, but also the politician sort of agility, but also the support behind that. So really glad to be back here again this year, really to have the conversation with the stakeholders, but also most importantly, back to the question. So we are, in terms of value chain, telecom, we are the device chipset module vendor. So I work for u-blox, which is a sweet semiconductor vendor. What would you say? We are providing the DNAs of Metaverse, the building blocks, because that connectivity between our, between us, between the device, the people, between the device and car, but also localization. So these are, if you like, the building blocks. So always, if you like, given that position in the ecosystem, we'd like to see more devices being equipped with that metaverse capability. But of course, there's challenges, but there's also opportunities, which I guess we can touch upon later.
Yeah, what I hear, and I think that u-blox is building like a foundation blocks for the metaverse. And then on top of that, I see the communication, the need for the network. And now I would like to introduce you with Ionis Markopoulos, which is the lead of international European business at Nova ICT. Could you just briefly introduce your company's focus and things around what you're doing with metaverse solution development?
Thank you, good afternoon. Actually in two companies, Nova and Nova ICT. Nova is a telecom operator. Nova ICT is somehow a spin-off on the integration level. I'm the head of EU and international business of both companies. What we currently do, and this is our strategy, we started our strategy 2 years ago, actually. First of all, we've set up a large testbed. We want this testbed to become sustainable. And this testbed is not only 5G, it's 5G evolved. The starting point is 5G evolved. We want to sustain it till 6G and beyond. This testbed is open. We have a lot of virtualized tools. It's a coalition of multiple organizations, research institutes, and companies in Europe, sustained by and funded partially by EU projects. Actually, we have open calls now in the fidal.eu. You can find it because we want to engage third companies, bringing use cases, not just applications. Use cases meaning applications on the next level, digital twins, devices, users, everything. Engagement of users is hugely important for us. And beyond that, we try to apply verticals. We understand that Metaverse, it's in its infancy now. So we want don't want to scare the organizations and the people. We want to go one step at a time. So we try to engage verticals. We consider it's in the Metaverse beginning level, in the public safety sector, in the healthcare sector, in the smart cities sector. All of them are small steps, but we try to create success stories. And we are there. In parallel to this, we are in the process of starting defining larger projects, for instance, for the capital of Greece, and other projects in the agricultural domain and others later on. So our strategy for the near future, meaning tangible future 2-3 years from now, we don't want to leave it in the far future. We want to create the basis of the metaverse in Greece in various domains, tightly coupled digital twins, applications, giving goodies for both the end user and the industries, but also for the government sector in order to plan the next level of the city. So this is for the beginning.
This is only for the beginning, guys. Great. What else I know from Greece is that you have very active chapter president at VR/AR Association. So good
Always,
job.
yes.
Good job.
Yeah, we are happy for this.
This is all around the ecosystem, what I hear. And then we have another person which is in between this ecosystem, bringing together the companies with innovative solutions, and that is Paul Seeley from UK. Nice to meet you here on stage. Paul, give us some intro.
Thank you. So hello everyone. So my name is Paul Seeley. I'm the Director of Technology Strategy at Digital Catapult, a UK organisation, a research and technology organisation. We're mission driven. We focus on accelerating the adoption of advanced digital technologies, and probably. Oh.
Go on.
You're Keep on going.
Keep
All right.
going,
Okay.
yeah.
I was, yeah. Oh, louder now. Accelerating the adoption of advanced digital technologies, and this. So we have probably two big arms to what we do. We have an innovation team focusing on the innovation process, and also so that might be looking at a technology access program or acceleration programs, and also we have deep technical teams focusing on immersive technologies or distributed systems or AI and future networks. And so our view on Metaverse, so when we're bringing together multidisciplinary teams to work on these things. And our view on Metaverse, we were working on all of the underlying technologies before it became fashionable. And our view is that they are transformational. So we're still working on them now. It's probably less fashionable. I think people say that during these kind of less fashionable times, that's when people get serious and the really serious people do the building of the work. So that's where we're trying to work on it. And our view as well around Metaverse, we think it's really important that it's open and interoperable. And it's not just one thing, it's multiple different things all connected together. And so we want to really encourage that because that will maximize the opportunity for, as we'll discuss a bit later, for all of the people trying to make something of the Metaverse.
Great. But before I introduce our two guests from Stanford University, I have a story. And myself, I'm coming from hardware developer, I would say hardware development company, building augmented reality headset, really complex one. And then once we realized that we have built something outstanding and we want to prove that basically it's something outstanding, and we won't go into the healthcare industry. And in healthcare industry, basically, you know that it's complex. You need to get all the certifications, approvals, etc. And what we did, we shipped our headset to US, to FDA, to get this initial testing and approval from Food and Drug Agency that actually it could be used in healthcare and even more in operating room. And somehow this headset ended at Stanford University at Visualization Lab, led by Christoph Leuze. And there how we met, and then afterwards also with Dr. Greenleaf. And Christoph, maybe let's start with you. What you're doing at Visualization Lab, and then maybe a bit more about Nakamura as well.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. So I loved trying out the headset. It's a really nice optics. And so about my background, I'm the director of the Visualization Lab in Stanford and was doing research in augmented reality. And now, like you mentioned, now I have a startup, and it's interesting to see this difference between doing research, where we're just concentrating on the problem. How can we create value, for example, to the medical practitioner? How can we use augmented reality to guide a medical procedure to project the tumor directly onto the patient? And we didn't really think about how to minimize the pain points of the user. Just, okay, how do you solve this one problem? If the setup takes 5 or 10 minutes during the surgery, not a big deal, as long as we can show this is a little bit more precise during the surgery. Then I received funding from the government, from the US government, the so-called Small Business Innovation Grant, founded a startup where I'm now trying to sell this technology. And suddenly I was confronted to customers, to consumers who actually want to buy this. And now I need to convince them to buy this technology. And then I realized there's a fundamental difference. And now I also want to ask, because we said before, it's always going one direction. I want to ask the audience, who here actually has a VR headset and who uses it regularly? So I would say this is a sort of moderate amount of people. And one of the big reasons might also be because there are still too many pain points. There are still a lot of pain points to use the technology. And this is what I realized, that this is something we really need to solve for the adoption of the technology. Minimize the pain points. You have to, the phone almost has like too little pain points. That's why we're always hanging there. We can just take it out, click, and it's running. With the headset, always put it on, then I need to wait till it's running, then I need to go in my menu, and it already takes a minute or perhaps 2 minutes just to get it running. Minimizing these, I think this is crucial if we want to sell this to our customers.
And we are arriving to Dr. Walter Greenleaf. Really honored to have you here between us. And a little intro. I know that you've been in this field for a decent time, let's say like that.
More than 30 years.
Yeah. So what's your experience so far? And yeah, give us a little insight into it.
Well, my experience is that we're almost there. Back in the early days of VR technology, we always thought 5 years from now is when it's really going to take off, and it's been a moving target. But now I really do feel it's only 4 years. In terms of my passion and my activities, I work as a translational neuroscientist. I help academic groups move their products out into the clinical world. But I also work with a number of the investment groups, medical product companies, with some of the large healthcare networks, and help them understand emerging technologies. And we are really getting there. The U.S. Veterans Association hospital network is our largest healthcare network in the U.S. And we, just in the last year and a half, we've brought 4,000 clinicians have started using VR headsets clinically. They just placed an order for another 10,000 headsets. And it's being used for more than 30 different clinical indications, ranging from helping with depression, anxiety, to helping with stroke rehabilitation, helping with addictions, helping with pre-surgical planning, training patients, training clinicians, supporting aging in place, so many different arenas. So it's still early in terms of getting out to the larger market, but we now see so much momentum in the clinical use of extended reality technologies, immersive technologies.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What I hear that most of the first use cases are more related to the mental health, right?
That's true by and large, because we have such acute needs there, but we also see a lot of adoption in stroke rehabilitation, for example. I think that's driven by the fact that it's very effective, but also we can measure a little bit more accurately than we can in mental health the progress of the patient, and that helps us come up with the business justification for moving new technologies in.
Mm-hmm. But those use cases are more like off-site use cases, right? What about real-time use cases, like during the, I don't know, operation, in operating room? Do you have some examples to give us?
I think both of us do. In my case, I had the privilege of watching a neurosurgeon remove a tumor. He had taken images of the patient's brain and identified the tumor, did some data fusion of different layers of information. modeled that in a VR system, almost automatically. The system was very sophisticated. Showed his surgical approach, and he had a couple options of different ways to go with different risks of doing different points of damage. Showed that to the patient. Had the patient had some agency in helping the surgeon choose between the trade-offs of different approaches. And then in the operating room, overlaid on the field of view from the surgical microscope, he could see in real time his surgical plan. And also as he made decisions about where to go, the imaging kept track of his approach, helped identify like the optical nerve, and so he could avoid that. It was just astonishing to see, and he's had dramatically improved results compared to his own procedures before using extended reality technologies, and also compared to some of the other neurosurgeons. So just one example of how we can do more. And you're right, Christoph, we have to identify where it not just makes a big difference clinically, but also reduces time, saves money. And in this case, it was both. And there's other examples of that. So again, I think we're finally getting on the other side of transitioning from a lab-based type of approach to now something that's going to be scaling within the enterprise. And I feel that the medical enterprise is going to be one of the deeper areas for the metaverse, I think, in terms of connecting people who are aging in place and perhaps lonely and isolated, helping people get to know other people in other cultures, helping people who might be struggling with alcohol problems, for example, who are in a small town and don't want to go to a meeting to discuss it. They can meet online. There's so much we can do with the technology that's finally taking off.
As far as I understood, Christoph, also you are working with real-time applications, right? By using AR headset and giving instructions during the maintenance or some defense applications as well. So yeah, could you comment on that, how you are doing that?
Yes. Also to get back to the medical use case, so the augmented reality and also this headset that you showed us makes a lot of sense for the augmented reality use case. So this is a very, very immediate, obvious sense. If I want to pick up the lid of this bottle, I look at it, I take it. If this was now a tumor inside the patient, what is the current standard? I look on a separate screen with an MRI scan, and then while looking at the screen, I try to really accurately figure out and pick up this lid from the table. So AR makes a lot of sense. I look there, I see the tumor, I take it out. And this is something right now that is used already and works well for rigid objects, so for bones, for the head, for example, for the skull, where we don't have a lot of tissue movement. Once the soft tissue deformation comes in, it becomes a little bit more complicated problem. But there are then also still some hardware questions, and this is where the light space comes in, where how do we perceive this object? If I have a real object, it's really easy for me to perceive where it is. I'm not sure whether most people here have tried an AR headset. If I see the same lid here from my bottle in an AR headset, depending on the display, it's actually a little bit difficult for me to estimate how far it is away. Yeah, because they have like a sort of a fixed focal distance. And the light space, for example, I think, I'm not here, I don't get paid for that, but the light space is one of them that solves that by having multiple of these focal planes. But yeah, training in general, I think, is a great case. So everything that like focuses on the real world, where we show in the real world some procedures that are linked to the real objects. What do we do? What are the next steps? What do I need to do when a step is done about a certain type of equipment?
That's from the visualization perspective. But what I want to hear is, what are the network requirements and what are the delays you have in these specific applications? What are you using today and what you would like to have tomorrow? And maybe then we can also more talk to Jonis, what are the expectations in the industry to basically be able to provide the necessary network and bandwidth to operate with such huge data sets as DICOM data, for example, coming from the tomography.
So the question was, what kind of data? We have on the one hand data going out. So our headset, for the headsets, you usually think about a display. But a headset is actually, I would argue, even 20% display. It's 80% sensors. It has cameras. It has depth cameras. It does hand tracking, it has eye tracking, it has a microphone. So it's a bunch of sensor data that we need to send out. So that's, first of all, where we need some very fast network. Then we need to get the images back.
Some very fast network. What is it?
So this is, I would argue that in a well-controlled environment like a hospital, you're probably fine with Wi-Fi. I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to say that here at this conference, but Wi-Fi might do the job. If you're in a large outside environment, people are moving around a lot, then obviously 5G makes more sense. So I think it depends very much depending on
keyword
the use case. Yeah.
Thanks. Walter, your experience so far, do you rely more on Wi-Fi, or what are the network you use in your use cases?
Well, it really depends. Many of the use cases are distributed at different clinics, different hospitals. And Wi-Fi actually can be a problem because the hospitals are very locked down. It's hard for an emerging company to interface with their networks because the security restrictions. So we see a lot of examples of edge computing and other ways of not having to upload the data except when convenient, maybe off-site. There's some creative solutions being developed there, but certainly we want to have lighter weight headsets. So much of what the experience is has nothing to do with the headset. It's the computation, the generative AI to make the environments, the analytics of the signals, because we're not just displaying information, as Christoph pointed out, we're also capturing pupil dilation, eye gaze, also heart rate data, facial expression, sometimes voice tone, and then we have to process that compared to a large data set to come up with interpretation of these signals to understand someone's emotional state or a cognitive state. So it's a dynamic process, and the challenge often is that interface of where do we start. Once we can get out and use 5G or something else to get to our data sets and do the analysis, it's great, but that first leg of in a clinical situation or reaching people who are living in remote areas, that's a problem there too. Mm-hmm. So we need 5G everywhere.
Good. Sylvia, a bit comment maybe from your side. u-blox is also not only semiconductors, but also positioning solutions, right? And what kind of network do you rely on today, and what do you see in the roadmap for future?
So first of all, back on the network sort of capacity requirements moving forward, I did a project early this year for my MBA thesis on value creation for telecom. So I looked around the data available publicly. So they're quoting about, from Credit Suisse, quoting about 20 times more capacity increase because of Metaverse implication. And that's modest kind of increase, 20% more. So that it's interesting because there's more devices, but also the application will be so diverse that you need to equip your infrastructure, but also like positioning solution to cater those use cases. Now back to the positioning aspect, which is interesting because for Metaverse, most of the applications are indoors, all right? So when you're outdoor, you can rely on GPS, GNSS, which is great because then that helps you to identify your precise location, maybe in centimeter. Yeah, it's pretty good. But when you move indoors, you don't have that coverage. So you either rely on Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or cellular, right? So 5G, yes, great bandwidth. As a rule of thumb, physics, the wider the bandwidth you get, the higher accuracy you can possibly get. Of course, also depends on the location of the nodes, right? If you have radio nodes scattered in this indoor building, the more you have, of course, that gives you kind of triangulation to help you get that location. But there's also a question about the cost, and there's also a question about when you deploy your radio system indoor, have you also think about the topology for positioning as well? So that normally not the case. So normally, you know, when we talk to the indoor infrastructure vendors, of course, that's a question like, okay, do you radio survey of the environment? Because the radio mapping is very different if you deploy your position indoor. And of course, one of the key example we have been evaluating, and we have some demo kits which helped some of the earlier adopters. The indoor localization is a Bluetooth, low power, low energy localization based on angle arrival, and that is promising because that helps you to get into that sub-meter level, which is a good starting point for some of the indoor applications.
Absolutely, I love to hear that. Johannes, comment from your side. What is your company's strategy in terms of network development?
Yeah, I would like to take one step back on this. First of all, why we invest, all of us? Because we consider Metaverse a real thing, not a jargon. We consider that it's a real business, and meaning real business gives benefits to both companies but individuals. So we take this stand as well. Actually, we think that this will give us a big potential. Some studies say that the CAGR will be more than 40% per year till 27, reaching 60 billion and more. So we invest because we expect benefit. The Metaverse needs multiple layers of technology collaboration. The lowest layer is the network. I totally agree with what has been said. 5G is a good starting point. Okay. But it's not only that. We have to see how we tackle indoors, how we tackle rural areas or white areas, collaborating seamlessly with NTN, non-terrestrial networks, low-orbit satellites, with common devices. And I will come to the devices as well. So we're currently trying to test 20 millisecond round trip. We expect that reaching 6G, this will lower even to 2, 3, 5 millisecond round trips. But still, there is a lot of things to do. We don't have to work only on the network, but also on the architecture, bringing more common, accepted the edge computing, the well-trained AI models that will run on the edge in order to be able to address massive usage of sensors. Now we tackle to 1 million sensors. When the Metaverse come in place, we have to tackle billions or trillions. And even we think that sensors will evolve. We will have common sensors from tablets, VR glasses, or whatever, phones, seeing sensors, seeing the pollution of the air. But we will tackle more advanced sensors from now on, sensors that read the brain or emit the stress of someone or other activities. So we have to be able to incorporate seamlessly all the technology that will emerge. Networks, sensors will be there, and sensors will be able to send in real time massive data. So we have to address this data. We have to enforce applications on this data. We see the digital twins as the intermediate of all this decision making and addressing new applications to the people. So we are working on all this stuff, not on our own. We create an ecosystem. We are the basis of the network. We collaborate with other network operators and vendors as well. And we try to engage as much as possible the sensors provider, looking the future, and the application provider. But also we have to engage the end user, because so far we are the providers, no matter from what angle. We have to get the users, get acquainted with this. We have to create them the need to use it. We start with government, cities, with museums. We have some use cases, as we said before, with healthcare and PPDR. I'll be more than glad to test your VR classes as well. But also, we try to put it in the market and create success stories. But these success stories should be sustainable, not just demonstration use cases, but real use cases that work and provide value and the revenue. So this will create the proliferation of our strategy.
Totally agree. And once there is technology, hardware, network, everything, we need use cases. And to have these use cases and applications, we need creators. And here I want you, Paul, to engage here and tell us more, because you've on daily basis meet with these content creators and bring together with technology, and then some outcome appears.
Yeah, so so when we were discussing this in terms of the economic case, or how you build the economic case for Metaverse, we were thinking, we do a lot of work in the creative sector, and in the UK there's a strong creative sector, and but they're quite small organizations working inside the Metaverse. We just talked about in the medical area, lots of very expensive technology, and so I think to get a really diverse pool of creators who can create some really interesting, interactive content to work with, that you need in order that the people want to access and use these kind of virtual environments, means we need to provide that, make that accessible. So we've got technology access programs. We have a virtual environments, an advanced media production where you've got stage, volumetric capture. And the idea is that we give creators an opportunity to experiment with these kind of tools and then work out what works, what doesn't work, build the skills. This isn't directly for Metaverse, but it is for immersive sort of uses and applications. And that way, our sort of theory, we don't have a particular answer, but our theory is that give people access, creative people, innovators, the access, lower the barriers, and then we can end up with something really interesting that comes out of it. And that's when you start to see some economic value. And the other thing we were thinking of as well is what's really important is for a creator to get a return on their investment in time or creation. And that's where we, although I hesitate a bit to bring together lots of now unfashionable ideas, but we think the Web3 tech stack is really important here from that side, because it allows you to effectively tokenize the value that you're creating and own it, and then you can earn from it. And ideally, not just in one walled garden sort of metaverse sort of area, but ideally across the multiple ones, if so that you can create something and then earn from it. And that's how if you don't do that, then people aren't going to bother, and you'll end up with effectively the current walled gardens with big brand advertising, which is probably not going to be enough for it to really proliferate. So that's kind of another sort of unfashionable things like Metaverse, creator economy, and Web3. I think those are really important in order to get creators to create and earn from what they get from it.
Definitely. And I want to convince the audience that actually there is behind the Metaverse, there is business, and we will start to earn from the huge investment what we've done. I mean, all the main players in the market have voted with billions and billions of dollars into this technology and hardware and apps and everything. I would like to ask all of you, if we compare like investment made and the expected outcome and business behind it, can you comment in your specific companies and industries where you all come from, which are so various? But I would like to hear that, yes, we believe, or no, we don't believe that we will start to earn in 5 years, 10 years, or maybe later, or maybe already tomorrow. Paul, what do you say? You connect those dots on daily basis.
So, so that was just the creative side. So we're also doing work in, say, trying to get advanced digital technologies adopted in an industrial setting. So with corporate or with manufacturing environment, and in that there's considerable interest in. You mentioned it before, or one of you mentioned it, training and examples like that. So there is real work sort of on the way, I would say, already. So your question is like, how long before there will be real? And it's really tricky because to build the vision of a fully immersive, real-time world takes a lot of investment. But I think what we're going to find is lots of sort of smaller use cases that solve specific things that gradually will build up. You were talking about in the kind of health area, you've got quite focused areas that really make a difference. And I think that's where we'll start from. And I think the expansive vision will and this is why I said at the beginning, open and interoperable. Because if you start with the idea that things can be interoperable, then you can start to join all these pieces together into something more interesting, something a bit more expansive. So then you get your smart city, which has got buildings in it and it's got transport all from different areas. So that will take a longer time, but we hope that we sort of can build this incrementally towards it, with each bit being quite useful.
Walter, I'm sure you can add on top of this.
Well, yes. One of my favorite quotes is by William Gibson, where he said, "The future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed." And I think we are there. I've seen many groups investing in XR technologies for healthcare. I've seen a few exits, successful exits and acquisitions. I've seen many groups successfully deploy the technology. And you know what? We have to. It's going to be, the climate crisis is going to be very expensive, but so is the aging crisis. We've got maybe 15 years, 20 years before the number of people who are living so much longer than previous generations extend their lifespan, live to be 90, live to be 100, but two or three out of every 7 of us is going to have neurodementia unless we figure out how to help with that. And we have smaller family sizes. So we have to, as a society, come up with better healthcare to support aging in place, systems that will study our cognitive state, and if we have mild cognitive impairment, adjust their user interface to us. So we will have smart cars, smart refrigerators, smart sensors everywhere, as Jan has pointed out. But we need to do what we call effective computing, be able to measure people's emotional and also cognitive state and adjust the user interface to support an aging population. If we don't, it's going to be extremely expensive and not good for society or for the individual. But your question is, what's here now? And I just see so many fantastic use cases. I think we're going beyond the early adopters and we're going into places just say, sure, this is a good way to distract someone from a painful procedure. This is a good way to train someone how to manage their depression. And it's transitioning over to becoming something that has great value. But like I said, it's already here, it's just unevenly distributed. We will, though, I think the medical enterprise is going to be one of the deepest use cases for the metaverse, because we have to connect people to each other and to their support teams and to their families as we move forward, and the metaverse is the way to do that.
Okay, Christoph, you want to add on this?
Yeah. So I would actually argue, so I'm not exactly sure how much money we make with the metaverse, but we make a lot of money with the real world, because there are plenty of problems in the real world that we can actually address with augmented reality. So if we look at, if I go to a factory now, so with Nakami, our customers right now mainly come from industry, so manufacturing companies, for example, that have huge worker shortage, need to train new workers how to use machines. If I go into one of these factories trying to use a CNC machine, I have no idea. If I have somebody on my side, some expert by my side who tells me exactly, okay, first you press this button, then you open the door, then you loosen the tool, super easy. I could, on the first time, probably use one of these machines. And this is what augmented reality can provide. It can provide this knowledge transfer by showing people in the real world, on the real machine, on the real equipment, how certain procedures are done. So I think, I'm not just so sure about the metaverse, but in the real world, definitely a lot of money and a lot of need from industry that we can solve with augmented reality solutions.
Thank you so much for your shares and thoughts. We have right now 10 minutes time for audience to have questions, right?
Yes, we do. Before questions, just a quick response about the poll that we held. So we asked people, so which industry do they think that will benefit most from metaverse ecosystem? And the answer is entertainment and gaming.
Okay.
Followed by education and training, and also retail and e-commerce. So a lot of industries in our viewers' opinion. So yeah, anybody willing to take a microphone and ask a question?
before the question, maybe I could ask, do you agree, Christoph and Walter and Jonis, about this poll, which we just received the results?
I think there was a selection bias to that poll.
Right, right. Okay, we have a question here.
Yeah, to build a great economy around the metaverse, we basically need every single bits and pieces, right? So technology, software, connectivity, so on and so on. Basically an ecosystem, right? I hear that there is an ecosystem in Greece, there is an ecosystem in UK, I know in US as well. But those are, as I understand, mostly sort of local ecosystems, right? I think we need sort of a global ecosystem in general to make it happen. So how do you, like every single of you, how you find this possible? How you think it can happen? How we can make it happen?
Go on.
Yeah, I can take it. Also, in relation to the previous question, it's exactly the same. So we do not consider, first of all, metaverse as a meta life. It's an extension of the current life. So we believe that as people evolutionarily go into the metaverse, they will extend their way of feeling, they will increase their senses. They will be able to communicate more contextually with additional data. And this is the opportunity, the business opportunity. Everyone finds its own place in the metaverse. Others, they like gaming. Others, they can offer healthcare or elderly care, or autonomous driving, or cultural, or participation to events. So everybody has its own feeling, but there is the threat. The threat is that we are going to create silos. No matter what the hype is and no matter how the technology evolves, we can create easily silos. And this will stop the proliferation or decrease the proliferation potential. So the threat is that we have to work very closely with the standard bodies in order to create the federation means between the models and the interoperability means. When we create an application, this application may have to collaborate with a different application. For instance, the elderly with the gaming or the cultural or the movement. When we have a smart city, we can federate it with another smart city, of course, in a privacy-preserving way, and we can exchange best practices, lessons learned in terms of models, and we can practice these lessons learned. So in order to proliferate this and become global, both vertically and horizontally and vertically, we have to create close with the standard bodies, create the frameworks, make the necessary APIs and models that we all need to obey in order to go one step further and make it more global and more across the economy.
Absolutely.
All right, next question here.
Yeah, I'm sure that there will be absolutely amazing business cases, but what I'm really curious about is how metaverse and according technologies could shape the future of innovation and perhaps different models of engaging with each other between the stakeholders, and maybe how to make the problems more accessible to solutions. Perhaps you can share either any good examples or methodologies or just ideas on this topic.
I think, Paul, your example of creatives coming up with something that can be contributed and sold to the broader ecosystem, we have to make the content that we have, for whatever purpose, engaging and interesting. And we have to put that layer that you mentioned.
Yeah, we were talking just before this, Walter mentioned earlier on storytelling, and I think that's a really important part of this, is storytelling of what you can, what the environment can do, and to have a sort of a positive sense to it. And so I think that's really important. Something that is really important as part of that is to make sure that you have the right voices doing the storytelling. This is something that is a bit of a concern, that we're taking, there's a risk of taking the inequities that we have today and just reflecting it in the future. I'm just thinking here in terms of the biggest platforms that are currently being discussed for metaverse. It's an expensive thing, so it will be dominated by, feel slightly exposed, dominated by kind of white middle-aged men from California, and that just seems like the wrong.
Wearing black.
Yeah. So it seems like the wrong thing. So we need to make sure that that the storytelling is accessible and made available to all types of people, and that is not just. I mean, I was just thinking, it's not just in this context, but also for innovators, access to capital to be able to develop ideas and do their thing. So I think that's a really critical part. And then,
all right, I think we need to move on with the next question. Sorry for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, time is our enemy.
Yeah, my question is related to digital age, lifelong learning, and digital age university. Do you know examples for application of Metaverse which are not copying the approaches of today? Yeah.
Yes.
This is more to you, I think.
We have taught during the pandemic. We taught courses in the Metaverse very successfully. And one example that I love is what was done at the medical Case Western. The medical students who were learning anatomy learned on a virtual cadaver in a team approach, even though they were distributed, and they scored to have a 40% higher retention than those students who learned in real life. So not only did the Metaverse connect them in a way that was cost-effective and necessary at the time of the pandemic, it also improved their learning.
All right, we have at least 2 more questions.
First of all, I want to say thanks that you are here. I'm so happy for that. And this question will be for the Dr. Walter Greenfield. Since I am extended reality developer, I'm working with brain-computer interface, BCI, and I just wonder if you have kind of experiments back in Stanford where you use this kind of technology just to distinguish hand movements or finger movements, and I just wonder if it's possible to distinguish these small details. I'm sorry that this is not a question about 5G, even though I have worked with the remote rendering of the edge servers, but yeah, this is
Yes, there's work using FNIRS technology and also EEG measurements and other imaging technology, or even just measuring from the periphery to get hand movements and positioning. So there's new innovations coming through to interface us to the Metaverse.
Yeah.
Not invasively, but...
Excuse me, we need to move on with our next question.
We'll talk later. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Uwe Bede from Rode and Schwarz. So if you have kids, you have a discussion when to get the first smartphone for kids. So my question is, what is the right age to introduce kids to the Metaverse?
It's hard to keep them out. That's a hard question.
So when is the right age to expose kids to give them a phone? I'm not sure whether there's a big difference whether we give them a phone or we give them the goggles. The phone might be even more dangerous because it's less easy to control. So, yeah. But I'm a middle-aged white man from Silicon Valley.
At least the jacket is not black. All right, we have a next question here.
We are interacting with the digital environment through the flat screens, but of course the huge potential is to interact through this augmented or virtual reality solutions, but for many people it causes motion sickness. And if we will not solve this problem, there will be little business there to create this metaverse solution. So do we have hope to solve it in the closest future?
I should jump in to say that I think that problem has been solved. A lot of the nausea problems we have were with yesterday's technology, especially when people are using cell phones, sliding them into a cardboard box. I think by and large now, I work with a lot of elderly people. The motion sickness, if we calibrate right and design, it's often the design too. If you move the world around someone without giving them agency, you'll make them sick. But if you let them move through the world, So a lot of designers don't appreciate that, and that's where a lot of the motion sickness comes from. But what are your experiences?
We will maybe know that later when we talk in the break, because we need to finish this session, so we have time to switch rooms if we need to, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks a lot for moderating. Thank you all, the panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you.